he refuses to go, which his predecessor, who was impeached, did. She refused to resign. They will go through the entire impeachment cycle. It will probably go faster this time because I think the grievances are much greater this time. He is a much greater threat to South Korean democracy than any previous president. Obviously, he was willing to suspend the Constitution. He has to go. And so I would imagine that the whole impeachment process will be very accelerated. He'll probably be gone by the end of January. Definitely by the end of February.
Now, South Korean MPs have begun impeachment proceedings against President Yoon Suk-yeol after thwarting his move to impose martial law. The president was forced to lift that declaration soon after saying that it was needed to protect the country from North Korea's communist forces and to eliminate anti-state elements. Let's first say hello to Robert Kelly, Professor of Political Science at Pusan National University in South Korea. Robert, good afternoon to you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi. Well, it looks then as if the president, well, he's bowed to reality. Is that what's gone on?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole sort of argument out there that he just sort of got disjoined from the reality of life in South Korea, that he actually thought they could pull off a military coup in a country that had thrown off military rule. People are very proud of that, right? And you still have people who had actually fought in the streets in the 80s against South Korea's dictatorships. There was sort of really broad shock in the country. And I think among most observers, people who follow Korean affairs, there was no telegraphing of this whatsoever. Nobody had any sense that this was coming. Not even several members of the president's own cabinet knew this was coming. I mean, this really kind of just came out of the blue, and it fell apart almost as rapidly as it came together, right? And so everybody is now kind of wondering what this thing was, right? Was this a coup, or is this some kind of clown show? I mean, it's just very bizarre.
Robert, I mean, you should know better than most of us. What on earth went on here? Did he have a rush of blood to the head? You'd have thought that it would have been very clear from the outset that declaring martial law in this way out of the blue could not fly, could not work.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I've emphasized in my own commentary on this in the last couple of days. I mean, it really is a shocker. I think we will probably learn when this all comes to light in the next, I don't know, a couple of weeks, when we learn how the decisions were made that led up to this. I think we're probably going to find out that this was impulsive, that this is something that the president decided in the last 2 or 3 days in a peak of anger over some particular issues. The president is very upset that his wife has been relentlessly investigated by the opposition. I actually have some sympathy for the president in this. I think the South Korean opposition should kind of let this go. I think they've also been excessively obstructionist with him in the parliament. But I mean, this is obviously a wild overreaction, right? You don't end constitutional rule because of divided government, right? It doesn't work that way. But I have some sympathy for his complaints, but I mean, he just wildly overreacted, and everybody is just sort of in shock. I mean, didn't he expect that people were going to protest, right? South Korea's got an established protest culture. Did he not think that South Korea's liberal and democratic partners would object? Korea or Japan, the United States, the European Union. I mean, these are the countries that are sort of peer states for South Korea. And would they accept this? Almost certainly not. And it doesn't look like there's any kind of planning for this at all. And it just looks like it sort of happened. And I think that's why you see the sense of shock in all the media coverage, because it's just nobody's quite sure what to make out of it. And that's why I think we're going to find out it was probably impulsive. He probably just decided to do it.
Right. What does it mean for South Korea now in the future? It is a significant country, isn't it, of strategic importance. Sure. America's got tens of thousands of troops based in South Korea. Where does it leave the country?
I think the foreign effects are kind of contained because it collapsed so fast. If this had actually resulted in a genuine military coup, street battles, things like that, if you had tanks in front of the main television stations and things like that, I mean, if it looked like something out of I don't know, like a coup in Latin America from the 70s or something, then it would have a pretty significant impact. But again, because it looks like this sort of bizarre flash in the pan kind of came and went, right? I'm not really sure that it's actually going to impact the structure of South Korea's foreign policy. It will impact, I think, the investment environment, right? The stock market has slipped. The Korean won has slipped. Interest rates will probably have to go up. I think foreign investors are going to think twice about going to South Korea. They think it's stable. It's been a democracy for 35, 40 years. But now, look, actually, it's still got reactionaries who think they can overthrow the government. I would imagine that's probably the biggest long-term effect, is some slippage on the bond market and in foreign direct investment. But I don't think this is going to lead to like a North Korean intervention or something like that. If the North Koreans going to do this, the time to do it was yesterday, and they missed that window.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting in so many ways. You know this country so well. It is strategically important because of where it is, but it's also got this enormous impact, this footprint, this cultural footprint across the globe. Its popular culture exports are huge. are
right,
consumed by hundreds of millions of people.
right. Yeah, which again, I think is one of the things that the business community is probably going to be saying to Korean elites in the future. Like, you can't just do this because our relationships with the rest of the world, our export relationships, and rely informally, not I suppose overtly, but they kind of informally rely on the perception that South Korea is a stable state and that
Mm.
tourists come here and that people can purchase goods and services from Korea and the companies will still be there in 6 months to support them because there wasn't a coup or something like that. I mean, this is, like I said, I think the biggest impact on this will be in the economic sector. I'd be curious to see if there's some kind of cultural impact. That's actually kind of an interesting question that you raised. We'll sort of create like a sort of a series of second thoughts about Korean cultural products. But I don't think so, because a lot of that's culture stuff. It's like movies and Netflix and song and dance and K-pop and all. I don't know anything about that stuff, by the way.
Mm.
But I think that's kind of apolitical, so I don't think that'll be too badly affected.
Okay, still a big,
Yeah, I'm
big
not a
impact.
fan of K-pop. I don't know too much about it.
No,
So
well, me neither. Mind you, I do rather like other of the film and TV industry of South Korea, which is
right,
a lot of it, a really
yeah,
impressive product. And as
yeah,
for
they
the
produce a lot of good stuff.
and as for the president, Robert, I mean, is impeachment now a given? What's the future for him?
Yeah, I would be shocked if he survives till March, probably earlier. I think there's going to be a bit of time. There'll be a bit of a grace period the next couple of weeks for him, maybe 10 days to resign. I think that's sort of where the conversation is going now in South Korea, that he needs to resign, he needs to quit. If he doesn't, and I don't think anybody has a sense right now of whether or not he will, because we haven't even heard from him since this happened. Right? I mean, he's just kind of disappeared for the last day.
Mm.
So like everybody's kind of waiting for him to go on TV and like tell us like what the hell happened.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's a really kind of weird moment. But if he refuses to go, which his predecessor, who was impeached, did, she refused to resign. They will go through the entire impeachment cycle. It will probably go faster this time because I think the grievances are much greater this time. He is a much greater threat to South Korean democracy than any previous president. Obviously, he was willing to suspend the Constitution. He has to go. And so I would imagine that the whole impeachment process will be very accelerated. He'll probably be gone by the end of January. Definitely by the end of February.
Robert, thank you. Robert Kelly, the professor of political science at Busan National University in South Korea.